Welcome to the Ironwood Gym. Today I'm going to go over the box squat, focusing primarily on technique. Now if you haven't seen them yet, and I've had a few videos that I put out recently covering different aspects of the box squat, you're definitely going to want to check those out, kind of put a little bit different perspective on things. And if you're utilizing the box squat as a coach or as a lifter, it's definitely a good knowledge base to have so you know what you're doing. Today, again, focusing primarily on technique, but I want to start on a couple different things before we jump into actually performing the box squat. The first thing is going to be footwear. And that's kind of been a hot thing in recent years, is what you should be wearing when you're squatting, what you should be wearing when you're in the gym in general, ranging all the way from these heavy duty, expensive weightlifting shoes, all the way down to wearing nothing at all, just going barefooted. Well, I definitely recommend you have something on your feet. I'm not an advocate of barefoot squatting just for the safety factor. If you drop a plate on your foot, it is going to do some damage. If you got a shoe on, it at least gives you some sort of protection. The next thing about shoes is it really depends on your style of squatting as to what type of shoe you're going to wear. So if you're a weightlifter and you squat with your knees coming forward out over your toes, then you're going to want something with an elevated heel. If you're a power lifter, however, things start to change a little bit, and you don't necessarily need to sink $200 into a pair of shoes when you can pick up something for 50, 60, 70 bucks. Okay? So if you're going to squat the way that I'm going to show you today, and that's sitting your hips back, keeping your shins mostly vertical or completely vertical, then you're going to want something with a very flat sole. It still needs to be very solid, just like the weightlifting shoe, but it's not going to have that elevated heel. So I actually started out wearing wrestling shoes, and they were very good. Okay, they did a very good job for me, but they also cost a little bit more. So when those wore out, I switched over to Chuck Taylor's, or the Converse Chuck Taylor's All-Stars. And these do a good job because they have a very flat sole. Okay, so they're not going to be pushing you forward. They let your foot spread out in the shoe, and they still provide a little bit of ankle support with these, with the canvas high tops. So they're definitely a good shoe to be squatting in. I don't get carried away on shoes. Being a former strength coach at the college level, a lot of the athletes that came in, I just let them wear their tennis shoes. For the most part, I think that was fine, but every once in a while you'd see someone squatting and their foot is just moving all around, the shoe is just squishing from side to side. That's not a good thing to have, so you definitely want something with a solid sole. All right, so the next thing I want to cover before jumping into actually performing the squat is setting your box height appropriately. And I've done a video on this before, so I'm not going to go into extreme detail, but you do need to set your box at an appropriate height. And for all those that like to just put a bench in, that's too high for most people, okay? Unless you're very tall, just pulling in the bench that you normally bench with into the rack is going to be too tall for most athletes and definitely too tall for most power lifters, okay? So you do actually need to have a box, and you need to set it to the correct height. Going back to some of the late 90s, early 2000s, where they like to have the box super high, that's really not doing very much for us. So we do need to put the box at a height that we're going to get something out of that squat. Yes, there are reasons to sometimes use a higher box. I'm talking about what happens most of the time. So you want to set your box, if you're utilizing a wider stance like we're going to be in this video, with the same stance so that the crease of your hip is right at or just below the top of your knee. Okay? Now the way you're going to want to measure this is actually taking the lifter or the athlete, having them put the bar on their back and squatting exactly the way that they're going to squat when they're doing their workouts or when however they're going to be squatting. So if you don't, what I've found is if you don't do it, if you just have them sit on the box, this is what they're going to do. They're going to walk up, they're going to sit like this. Well, this isn't how they squat. And what you actually find is that when they go to their actual squat stance, they have a bar on their back, so their hips are in a slightly different position. You're going to find out most of the time that you've set them too high. So have them put a bar on their back, have them squat exactly the way that they're going to squat when they're training, and set their box height accordingly. And you may take a couple sets to do that where you're sliding mats in and out. Okay, do a rep. No, it's too much. Put that in. Do a rep. Okay, put another one in, and then eventually you're going to find out exactly where you want them. But I would set it crease of the hip, right at or just below the top of the knee for athletes. For power lifters, it's going to depend on what you're looking to get out of it, but probably pretty close to that same thing. Leaving it too high is not very beneficial, so you want to make sure and get down so you're getting the proper musculature involved. Alright, so, and what I'm going to be saying in this video is going to be mostly talking about squatting with a wide stance, okay? And along with that, not letting my knees travel forward, okay? My knees aren't going to shoot out over my toes. They're going to stay back. I'm going to have vertical shin angles, the wide stance. And I'm not going to get too much into it. I know a lot of people, once you say wide stance or you don't let your knees go forward, they automatically just tune out. It's actually a good thing. It can be a good thing. I'm an advocate of both, and it's just about what you're trying to get out of it. So the things I'm telling you in this video pertain to a wider stance and keeping your shins vertical, not letting your knees travel forward. Okay, so when I'm saying hamstrings, predominantly posterior chain, that pertains to this style of squat. If you move the stance in, or if you let your knees travel forward, that's going to change what you're getting out of the squat. So those are just things you need to be aware of. But what do I mean by a wide stance? For me, and I'm about 5'8", my feet are almost all the way out to the edge of the rack. That's probably where a lot of people are going to be unless you're considerably shorter or considerably taller. Okay, so if you're in that 5'5" to 6 foot, 6'1", maybe even 6'2" range, you're probably going to be pretty close to this, maybe out a little bit, maybe in a little bit. And it's really not going to determine on the height of the person as much as it is the leg length. This is going to be where I'm going to be. Okay, when I'm saying wide stance is almost out to the edge of the rack. Sometimes I do sneak it out a little bit wider. And then from here, I'm going to sit back onto the box, which you'll see better from the side angle, but my shins are vertical, my knees are pushed out, okay? And I basically have about a 90-degree angle from my upper leg to my lower leg, which isn't crucial, but that's probably going to be pretty close to where most athletes or most lifters are going to be in this bottom position with that wider stance. What you don't want to see is the knees. What you want to see is your knees should be over your feet, not pulling into the inside. Now, if they're pulling in because of a flexibility reason, then you need to work on, probably start with a closer stance and work their stance out over a period of time. Could be within the workout or it could be within a few months. Okay, it just depends on the person. Sometimes they loosen up as they go through the workout. Some people, it takes a long time to get that flexibility. That's one way of doing it, just work their stance out, or you could put them on a higher box until they get the flexibility better. They could also be in because of they don't have the strength in their outer hips. In that case, we want to leave them where they're at and have them keep consciously thinking, push their knees out as they're squatting. You can even come up, put your hand gently on the inside of their leg, kind of pull them into that position so they feel where they're supposed to be. Or you can put a hand or a band around their knees, put a hand there, and then they push against it. You can do the same thing, put a band around both legs, have them squat with their knees pushed out against that band so they feel what they're pushing against. Okay, the third reason that their knees might be in is because their feet are actually too wide. So if I have my feet way out wide and I'm sitting my hips back, you can see that now my knees are starting to be a little bit inside of my feet. That's not really where I want to be. So my feet would need to come in a little bit to kind of keep all those angles in a better position. Now, the opposition to that would be if you look at some of the extreme powerlifters, they're using a lot of heavy supportive gear, heavy squat suits, briefs underneath the squat suit. Some of them do go with an ultra super wide stance. I have different thoughts on that. I'm not going to get into that here. But that's not really what I'm talking about in this video. I'm not going to the super wide, it's just a normal wide stance. So I'm gonna switch the camera angle up and we're gonna hit some things from the side view. All right, so now we're gonna look at it with the bar on my back. And I'm gonna do two different examples for you. The first one, I'm gonna take a narrower stance. I'm gonna let my knees travel forward, okay? In order for the bar to stay over midfoot, because the bar has to stay over midfoot just due to the physics of the lift, in order for that to happen, my torso is gonna have more of an upright angle, okay? And it doesn't have to be perfect center of the foot. It's just general midfoot position. Then I'll reposition my feet for the second rep. And what you're gonna see then is that I'm gonna take a wider stance. I'm gonna keep my shins vertical. My knees will be pushed out. What you'll see in that case is I'm gonna have more of a forward lean, okay? Because with my hips going back, now I have to lean forward more to keep that bar over the middle part of my foot. So here's the first one. And I'm gonna do these both with a low bar position, just to make it easier between reps. So first one, kosher stance, probably about shoulder width. Okay, I'm gonna sit down more instead of sitting back hard, which means my knees are gonna travel forward. Okay, now here, my bar should be over the middle part of my foot, approximately. I lean back just a little bit, but there you can see where I've got more of an upright torso. Okay, now I'm gonna move my feet out. I'm gonna push my knees out. I'm gonna keep vertical shin angles, okay? Now here, keeping the bar over the middle part of my foot, I have to have more of a forward lean, okay? Because if I get back here, now what's gonna happen? I'm gonna end up falling backward on the lift. So bar over the middle part of my foot, and I'm coming straight back up. So, that leads right into the discussion of high bar, low bar, and I don't want to get super in depth on this, but we really need to throw out that terminology, because other than if you're using a high bar position or a low bar position, you can squat however you want with a high bar and you can squat however you want with a low bar. What makes a difference in the lift, what makes a difference in the style of squat is what's happening with your shin angles, what's happening with your knees, what's happening with your hips, okay? Those are the things that make the biggest difference in a squat. Torso lean would come next, okay? And that's gonna be dependent on what's happening with your hips and your knees. So if your knees are traveling forward, you're not gonna have as much torso lean. If your knees are going back, you're gonna have more torso lean. It has nothing to do with bar position. Now, the wider stance, like I'm gonna show today, does lend itself to a low bar position. That tends to go better with that style of squat, but it's not mandatory. When I was coaching for the 17 years that I was coaching at the college level, when I had athletes squat with a wide stance, keeping their shins vertical, I didn't care what they did with the bar. Most athletes would use a high bar position just because it's more comfortable for them. Some athletes like to put the bar down low, but I'd say 90 to 95% of the athletes that I worked with in 17 years liked to have a higher bar position regardless of how they were squatting. Again, the style of squat is not dependent on where the bar sits on your back, whether it's high bar or low bar. That is not that big of a deal. So anyway, I'll get off that and we'll move on with the squat. All right, so another thing that you need to be aware of when you're squatting is actually what's happening when you're on the box. And I've went over vertical shin angles and having your hips back and torso lean and all that, but what are you actually going to do while you're on the box? And you should be trying to break the eccentric concentric chain. Basically, as you come down, you're performing eccentric muscle action. In a normal squat without the box, you would then perform an isometric contraction. Even if you don't stop, okay, you actually do stop just enough to change directions. In that brief instant, all the muscle groups involved in squatting are held isometrically because there is no movement for that brief period of time. Then you contract the muscles, you contract your hamstrings, your quads, your glutes, all that, to come up off the box or to come up out of your squat. So with the box, we can actually break that chain, which has a tremendous effect for building strength. And you can make the argument that it helps preserve the stretch reflex. I don't know if there's a lot of scientific backing to that, but that is an argument that you could make, that you actually teach your body to preserve that reflex. So, when you squat down to the box, okay, you should, right here, okay, everything's held tight. Then I release my glutes. Glutes and hamstrings can release. Everything in your back, now I'm relaxing right now, but everything in your back during a squat, your abs, your obliques, your low back, your upper back, all of that should be held very tight. Okay, you don't want to relax any of that. So, but as I release my glutes and my hamstrings, they now have to contract even harder to come up off the box. And unless you actually sit on the box, you're not going to break that chain. Okay, and you're not going to get that training effect out of it. So yes, there are coaches that teach you just to come down and touch the box or hover over it. You're not breaking the chain in that case. If you're only using it as a depth indicator, that's fine. Just know that you're not getting the most out of your box squats. So, as I squat down, okay, I'll do it with the bar here in a second, but as I squat down, everything is held tight. Okay, right here, I have tension on my hamstrings, tension on my glutes. Once I relax, you see me try to shift just a little bit. I just shift back a little bit. Some people will shift back a little bit more, okay? But everything else should be held tight. So I come down, I'm tight here, I relax onto the box, I shift back just slightly, okay? But I stay in this position. What I don't want to happen is to rock, okay? I don't want to rock back. I want to keep that torso position. So here it is with the bar. Okay. With the bar, it's the same thing. I held everything tight to start. I squat down, my knees are pushed out. I make contact with the box. I release, and then I flex to come up. Right here, everything's tight. Then I release, come up. Okay, now I'll do one where I'm actually rocking. So this is what you don't want to have happen. Okay. So when I do it properly, when I just release, I release my glutes, my hamstrings will probably release a little bit. Everything else is held tight. My torso angle stays the same, I just shift backwards. When I do that, in breaking that chain, breaking the eccentric concentric chain, I am training static overcome by dynamic and relaxed overcome by dynamic. So the muscles that are held static get that training effect because like my low back, my upper back, those muscles are all held tight, so they're held static. And then they're gonna overcome that with a dynamic movement coming up. With the muscles that are released, your glutes and your hamstrings, those are relaxed, overcome by dynamic, which really creates a tremendous training effect. Either way, that is being overcome by a dynamic movement coming up. Okay, rocking is what you don't want to have happen. And for, you know, it used to be taught that way many years ago, is that you wanted to sit on the box, you wanted to rock back, you wanted to rock back forward and come up. The problem with that is that one, it does not mimic your squat. When you take the box away, you can't do that or you're going to fall on the floor. So I'm of the opinion that you always want to try to mimic the squat, with the exception of breaking the chain, as much as possible. Okay, but as I rock, okay, as I rock back, now I have to rock back to the exact same position and then come up. If I miss that and I start to come up first, so if I don't get all the way back, and I only get part of the way back, and I start to come up, it's going to slam me right back down the box. Could bring me back up against the uprights. If I go too far, now I get bent over, okay? Because I went too far and I got that bar out over my toes instead of mid-foot, causing me to bend over and probably get into a good warning position, which also I don't want to do. So rocking on the box probably for most people is not going to be that great of a thing, but releasing and breaking that eccentric concentric chain is a good thing if done properly. All right, so now we're going to turn our attention to actually squatting with the bar and putting the bar on our back. And this style of squat is more of a posterior chain oriented squat, okay? Due to sitting your hips back and keeping the vertical shin angles, you're going to get a lot more hamstrings than you are quads. In fact, if you get very good at it, you're not going to be utilizing your quads a whole lot, okay? Yes, they are still working, so don't think that I'm saying they're not. They are definitely still working, but it really becomes a posterior chain squat. Hamstrings, glutes, low back, even your upper back is brought into play quite a bit with this. So, but just doing it doesn't really recruit as much as we could. We really want to bring in those outer hips. We want to bring your glutes into play as much as possible. So when you take the bar out, okay, and you get set up, and I've done an entire video that goes into a ton of detail on how to unrack the bar and how to walk the bar out. Came out a couple years ago. Definitely worth checking out if you want to really dig into that. But after you walk the bar out and you get your stance set, okay, you want to be already utilizing your glutes. You don't want to wait until you start the movement to start bringing musculature into play. So right from here, my glutes should be squeezed and I should be turning my knees out, okay? My feet should be angled. If I haven't said that already, my feet should be angled out a little bit. No specific amount on that, but I want something with my feet turned out so when I squat back, I can push my knees out over my feet. But I want to start that before I even start squatting. So from right here, when I have the bar on my back, my toes or my feet are externally rotating and my glutes are being squeezed tight, okay? From there, that's where I'm going to start my squat, immediately pushing my hips back, okay? I'm keeping my vertical shin angles as I do that. When I get to the box, I'm going to release my glutes and then I'm going to contract hard. Release my glutes, my hamstrings will release a little bit, then I'm going to squeeze my hamstrings, keeping my knees out, and I'm going to come straight back up off the box. Okay, so here with the bar on my back. Okay. Walk the bar out, take my stance. My toes are already angled out. Okay, from here, my glutes are being squeezed. I'm turning my feet out on the floor or against the floor. Right from here, as I start squatting back, my torso angle changes right off the bat. Okay, my knees are pushed out. I get to the box, I release my glutes. You probably saw me shift back just a little bit when I did that. Now I squeeze my hamstrings and I come back up. So some of the things to watch out for there is a lot of times with athletes or even with lifters that aren't as experienced in that they want to utilize their quads, okay? So they're not pushing their knees apart, which they should be, so you're trying to cue them up on that. But then when they come off the box, okay, instead of utilizing their hamstrings and their glutes to come up off the box, pushing their knees out and coming straight up, what they want to do is they want to use their quads. You'll see it right off the bat, because when they come off the box, they're going to come forward, okay? If they're using their quads, they're going to come forward and then come up. And I'm watching out. I'm going to hit my head on that. Scoot back just a little bit. So they'll sit back well. Okay, they'll sit back well. They're in good position here. But as soon as they start to come up, the knees will come forward. They'll do a more vertical shin angle, and then they'll come up from there. That is shifting the focus away from the hamstrings, away from the glutes, and putting it on the quads. That's not what we want out of this exercise. Strong quads is a good thing. We need to utilize it at the right time. So have them squat with a narrower stance and let their knees come forward. Train their quads that way. With this style of squat, you want them to keep their knees out and keep that vertical shin angle when they come off the box. Because what dictates what we're getting out of this is our leg and hip position. So if they start to come in Now I'm shifting to my quads. Instead of keeping that forward torso lean, okay, if I keep my forward torso lean, my shins stay vertical, now this is hamstrings. Okay, that's hamstrings coming up off the box. But once I let my knees come forward, again, the muscles being used is dictated not by the bar position, but by what's happening with your legs and with your hips. So if I come forward, now I'm putting the stress on my quads, and I'm not getting what I want from my backside, from my posterior chain. So it's very important to watch everything that happens in that squat, making sure that they're utilizing their legs the way that they should be utilizing their legs. And that's really it. That's your box squat, as simple as I can get it, or actually probably a little bit more complicated than that, but that's your box squat, okay? And that's what you need to be looking out for to keep things in the right spot. From here, I sit back, my shins stay vertical, okay? I've got a parallel box, creasing my hip, the same height at the top of my knee, okay? Okay, so now, whenever I come off the box, my knees stay pushed out, I'm utilizing my hamstrings, my posterior chain, and my shins should stay vertical, okay? I'm not coming forward to come off the box. So, that is it. That's the box squat. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll definitely get back to you. But until next time, always be in the pursuit of strength.